As a complement to the maker movement, which is all about innovation and making new innovative things, the less publicized fixer movement is something that looks beyond the throwaway culture and encourages people to repair and reuse items. Traditionally, it's been repairing watches, and with time, the usual suspects have been phones, computers, and all other sorts of electronic appliances. However, at times it becomes very difficult to justify repair. Sometimes it's just too costly, and at other times we have to go to this physical location where we have to wait for days and weeks until these products are repaired. Now, the question we are posing in this conversation is, what if we could empower the people out there to nurture a culture of repair and through remote collaboration and knowledge transfer? So with that said, I welcome all of you back to yet another session here at the Disruptive Innovation Festival 2018, where I am joined by Daljinder Sangera this evening, who is an innovation design engineer at Native Design and the brain behind the SENSEI platform, which connects people to human and machine experts for real-time guidance on fixing things. Thanks for joining me this evening, DJ.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for being here. It's delightful to have you here. And just before jumping into our conversation, I just want to have some words for our lovely audience out there. You know by now, if you have followed these sessions, that we're all about interaction. But there are probably some newbies out there in the audience. So connect with us, share your thoughts. If you have any questions, post them as soon as you have them so we can take care of them during our conversation. And how you can do that is by using the hashtag ThinkDiff on Twitter. You can write on the comment box on the thinkdiff.co session page, and you can also write the comments on the YouTube stream where you might be watching this stream right now. And DJ, now we're turning into the conversation. We're getting in there. We are asking first and foremost, we have this commercial repair ecosystem, and it's kind of very important to the global economy. But what we're focusing on this conversation in particular is the non-commercial repair movement. So why do you think this aspect is so important?
So the commercial repair movement is a $22 billion industry as of 2016 worldwide. So it's quite well established. But it's so important to empower a culture of independent people repairing devices. And so there's a number of reasons why. So the first and foremost is simply to make the most out of materials, to reuse, to get the longest life out of products that you can have. Another reason is to shift the power from consumers just using devices that aren't repairable and creating that demand for manufacturers to create products which are eventually repairable themselves. But one of the most important reasons as well is this change in ownership that's been going on. So with organizations selling users products, they get a revenue stream initially up front, but by not making products repairable, they're weaving into their business model downstream sales and locking users into this system as well, sometimes unknowingly. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it goes into deep into systems, for example, and when you have analogies like a bicycle. So you wouldn't buy a bicycle and expect to have to return it if you need to repair the chain, for example, that kind of simple things.
All right, so if we turn to just the fixer movement in particular, we can see that there's a bunch going on. Right now we have repair cafes, and we have so much out there that is trying to really hold on to this momentum so we can get into a bigger side of things. Now, why do you think this is? Why are people starting to think, okay, repair seems like something that is interesting. Why not do it more?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question there?
Absolutely, I can do that. No worries. We are thinking of people in particular. We have our audience out there that is thinking about maybe they have some products at home where we could repair these instead. I think there is a churn of attention in the people that seem that they want to do more of this. Now, why do you think the people are starting thinking of this instead of us offering something to them?
And when you say us, as in manufacturers just offering them to them, so I think the way that the system works in a capitalist society is that really the demand is what creates the supply, and so by consumers creating that demand to repair, and that demand is coming from being locked into systems, not being able to repair or fix things, or really feel like they own the products that they actually have purchased. They can create a demand for products that might be much more repairable, and kind of going from the bottom up approach, directly from people, sparking this movement, and causing manufacturers to really take that into consideration. So, I mean, this fight for the right to repair, it goes from people from simply just wanting to fix their iPhones, all the way out to farmers in Nebraska wanting to be able to fix their tractors on the farm fields, but not being able to because they're locked into a subscription model that they didn't realize that they were locked into with their products. So currently in the US, there's, I think 18 states have introduced this right to repair bill, which essentially is making repair info and parts available to owners and shops. So manufacturers can't necessarily just hide that information.
So what you're saying is that with more information comes more responsibility, it seems like.
In a way, yes. So having access to this information is super important. For example, on iFixit, about a third of the repairs, from some of the statistics that I've been reading about, a third of the repairs that have failed because of a lack of being able to find the right guidance or the right information at the right time. So people are currently resorting to YouTube videos, online tutorials, and those types of things. But obviously, having access to that in a way that empowers users to actually fix things, and that kind of caters to different skill levels is really important.
Now, what I know is that there are a little bit of equivocal insights on the matter of repair. We have some people that are very much into it. They have the information necessary to make those decisions at the moment. And there are others that think that it stagnates innovation. Now, you have a background in innovation, but here we are conversing about the topic of repair and how that should be empowered. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Are these two separate worlds, or can they work together?
I definitely don't think that having the ability to repair stagnates innovation. I think in the definition of innovation, it's always to better society in some form or another. And whether you look at that from a short-term perspective or a long-term perspective makes a big difference. So empowering people to be able to repair not only gives them a sense of ownership with their own products and this own kind of satisfaction of knowing and tinkering, and kind of fostering this kind of culture of making the most out of the devices that they have, I think is super important. And so I think often innovation gets kind of mixed with or confused with technology, where you have to really look at the long-term perspective on a global scale of what impact does this really have on the environment, and what are we really doing. So true innovation would be to kind of make the most out of the materials and resources that we have and reduce the amount that we have to extract from the earth, if we can. So I think so manufacturers currently do create products which aren't as repairable right now, where they might use adhesives to laminate layers together, which are really difficult to disassemble and replace parts with. So it's super important to keep pushing against that, so that we can continue to repair our own devices. It basically what I'm trying to say is that it's quite an established path to laminate layers together, to use traditional fastening methods, and so innovation comes in new methods of creating products in ways that allow for disassembly, allow for repair, I think that's innovative.
So it seems like they work together, but to what extent can we go where we can say that a restorative practice is innovative? Like, where do we draw the line, kind of, if we can put it that way?
To what extent? I mean, yeah, so obviously the framework, for example, we could take the Fairphone, which is a modular phone which you can kind of replace the parts on and continually upgrade, or so that's the kind of hope with that device. You know, after a certain period of time, the chassis or the main frame of that phone is going to become outdated. So there's always kind of a limit when we start to outdate kind of a traditional framework or architecture that we're working with. So I think also, but that does also feed into the culture around what our values are. So if we've reached a kind of a peak performance with phones, is there a need to really go to that next phone if the architecture of our existing platforms is perfectly fine?
And now we're talking about how to repair things, and apparently it can be innovative. But if we have these kind of thoughts, and we can pursue this to a larger extent, what do you think are the barriers to this? Why aren't we going there? We have mentioned some about information and so on. Information is gaining momentum. We are getting more informed on our decisions, but there are probably some other barriers that kind of stagnate this growth. What do you think those barriers could be?
Well, like I mentioned, I think the biggest barrier is us being allured to kind of the thinner, faster, lighter. So that culture of what our values are, I think that's one of the biggest barriers, and shifting that perspective of what is actually really important from a consumer point of view. I think that can have large scale kind of systemic implications of changing the systems. So obviously companies are making these things much thinner, lighter. They're making their products in a way that weaves in new business models. So that's quite a difficult fight to fight. But also on the kind of repair front, there is difficulty with different skill levels. So obviously some people aren't as skilled as others when repairing things. So some people might be perfectly fine removing an engine from a car. Others wouldn't be able to change the tire on a car. So there's different skill levels, and that's something that I kind of try to assess in the platform that I've been developing as well. Another thing is access to tools, access to equipment as well, and it's kind of a question, and there always has been kind of the promise of the sharing economy going into kind of the sharing of equipment as well, or like the classic communal kind of drill example. So most people might only use a drill for 15 or 20 minutes in its entire lifespan, yet if they were to buy it, they have to essentially go through this whole process of owning it, and it just kind of sits there collecting dust. So those are some of the barriers that I can see as well.
And tackling these barriers might kind of give rise to us repairing more stuff out there that we have maybe laying around the house or just broke down. And some people, and we have one audience member that just wrote on the website, thinkdif.co, so write your questions there if you have any. There is a question that says, is there a risk with people who learn to fix things? Might they just take this and charge for their knowledge kind of for other people as well? Do you see that as a risk or maybe an opportunity for people to kind of share these skills with each other?
I think that's a huge opportunity. So in the project that I've been working on, actually, it's kind of at the convergence of the gig economy and the knowledge economy. So right in the middle there, where we're sharing knowledge for kind of short, small amounts of money and small amounts of work. Because I think obviously that knowledge is what needs to be transferred, those little tricks of the trade, those kind of things are super, super important. But I definitely think that there's a huge opportunity in people being able to charge for fixing things. The risk, obviously, there are some risks where there are devices where you know, people might not be qualified necessarily to fix a boiler, or qualified to necessarily change a critical safety feature in your car. So there are limitations of this, but people are quite inventive and can figure things out quite quickly. So.
And usually what we do in this situation is we take our appliance that we have and we go to this repair cafe and we share knowledge with all of these other people. But as we said in the very beginning of this conversation, that usually requires us to get into this physical location where we share the knowledge with other people. But you are tackling that problem exactly with your project, the SENSEI platform that we also mentioned in the beginning. What are the upsides of that? Could you tell us a little bit about the project itself?
Yeah, actually. So what I'll do is I'll show you a little a slide deck here, kind of describing the project itself. There we go. Hopefully you can see that there.
We do indeed.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so SENSEI is essentially a platform that connects people who need technical assistance to both human and machine experts for real-time guidance. So traditionally, we go through, when we're going to go fix something, we look at stored knowledge resources. So this might be something on YouTube, something like online tutorials on iFixit. We might go to other people, but this requires us to retain the information and then apply it. And so the SENSEI platform is really trying to look at how can we shortcut that process, going from stored knowledge straight to application. Empowering people to repair and have that knowledge as they do things. So the vision, the initial vision for this project was, what if we could tap into an infinite stream of knowledge exactly when we needed it? So as we're fixing something, for example, the little diagram on the right, having contextually aware knowledge of as soon as you pick up that gear, it's telling you exactly where it needs to go. And it also caters in kind of smart ways to the level of expertise of the user as well. So on the SENSEI platform, as I mentioned, there's human experts and machine experts. So you might talk to a human expert, which is great at the more creative problem solving, working with anomalies and those types of things, and the machine expert, which I was developing part of this platform as well, is maybe for the more repetitive, redundant tasks. And as it does these tasks, it learns from the human experts. So this is kind of an initial prototype that I took to a repair cafe, actually. And again, kind of getting access to the right knowledge is often quite difficult on the internet for a very specific thing. And so this is where people are quite adaptive with sharing their knowledge or tricks. And so one of the quotes is, I looked at YouTube videos and couldn't find the right maker model. If I had this system, I would totally, absolutely use it. And so in this diagram, you see here, one of the experts on this initial prototype, it isn't an expert helping me across the other side of the world. It's instead across the other side of the table, just because it was a prototype in this stage. But he's helping me fix a blender for the first time, which I've never seen before in my life. And so he's able to kind of point to different devices, and the device on the SENSEI, the device that I'm wearing, enables pointing to specific objects and communication from the expert to the user.
And we have also published a little video on the comment box where the SENSEI project is kind of outlined, so we can see how that works in practice. So head to thinkdef.co in the comment box of the session, and you can see a little bit more how that would actually work when you're using the platform. And you're saying that everyone can use this platform.
Yeah. So the idea behind the idea behind the AI system is that essentially creating an AI system that isn't just technically good, but also adapts to different levels of expertise. So and also looking at kind of like how humans like to be instructed and how they like to be guided, and how we can actually empower people's current knowledge and complement their current knowledge to empower them to fix. So an example might be a GPS system giving direct orders to turn left, turn right, go straight. The users in this case are kind of directed like robots, whereas there are some new kind of guidance systems which just gently nudge the user to go in a certain direction. So looking at how we can nudge users while allowing them to use their own knowledge and intuition, understanding when to intervene in an instruction set and when not to. Real life, people love to skip steps, so they love to go ahead and then come back as well. So this is kind of a diagram just demonstrating, how we might adapt to different users and what the system is behind the platform.
And how far can I go by this myself, or how long can I consult with the person behind the platform? So I will talk to this expert about, say, my watch.
Yeah.
So now I have a problem with my watch and I don't know what to do, and I maybe have to get a component. Is a consultant, or maybe not a consultant, but the guy that is helping me, will he give me some suggestions on what to get, or is that completely on my accountability side?
So the consultant obviously would hopefully be an expert in the field. So on this platform, people sign up to become experts, and also people are signing up to obtain some help. And so the experts would hopefully have some guidance on where you might be able to find those parts. And this is why that right to repair is so important as well, and the bills that are being passed in the US, enabling shops to have spare parts and have those technical documents on hand. So yeah, hopefully the expert would be able to help in this case.
And are these experts focused on a very particular type of appliance? Is it electronics that are most prominent right now, or how far does this list of items go? Where does it stop?
We would still be building the database of the experts, but hopefully it spreads far and wide. So it could be anything from an expert in helping you turn on your router, or helping your grandmother turn on the TV with the remote control, all the way to doing kind of more complicated hacks, and hopefully not for kind of more malicious activity like hacking other things, like electric scooters that you find on the side of the road.
So how immediate is this? Do I just call someone and it's immediate, or do I wait for people, or how does this exactly work?
So yeah, so when you have an issue, you go in, log into the platform, and you have categories of different types of repair. So for example, if your faucet is leaking, you can tap into this, and instead of having a plumber come all the way over to your house while you have to skip work and pay them for their hour of time necessarily, potentially, instead of having that happen, it pings the plumber wherever he or she is, and we leverage the knowledge that this person has. So SENSEI allows the expert to be able to see a first-person view of what the user sees, and then allows the expert to point to different things in the user space. And so, yeah, this is an example of how you would connect with an expert, and it would work in a similar way as potentially as Uber. So where you tap on this, you select from a range of experts who've been rated, and then the expert essentially is pinged, and if he or she is free and willing to give their expertise on that specific subject, they could.
Great. Now, I just want to ask a little bit more about the motivation behind this. When was the breaking point where you found that it's necessary to have such a platform? When did it just click to you that maybe this is something that we should do?
Well, it was a long process to get to the point of kind of formalizing this output, but Actually, originally the concept was more about my interest in collaborative knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing. So I was researching into how in the future we're going to be sharing knowledge and information. So I went through a range of kind of wild experiments to look at how we might do this in the future. Everything from electrodes on people's arms controlling their hands, which is much more of an intrusive method of showing somebody how to do something, to kind of things that pull your arm in certain directions. So I was experimenting quite a lot along the way. And then as I got through this process, I started to understand actually how valuable knowledge transfer really is in the context of repair.
Now, if we boil the discussion down, we've been going on for pretty much half an hour about this topic. If we go back to the initial question that we posed in the very beginning of the session, if we could empower people out there to nurture a culture of repair with knowledge transfer and collaboration, how would you summarize everything that we said, kind of to make sure that our live audience that is joining right now kind of gets the initial idea that we're discussing here?
Yeah, so I think we can nurture the culture by empowering people to conduct these repairs and see the value in doing that repair. So allowing people to see the value in repair and also get that sense of satisfaction, I believe, can have implications such as people demanding those types of products and aligning their own moral values with the products that they purchase. At the end of the day, the demand and the culture is what drives companies to sell the products that they make. And so if this is what the demand is, and if that's what the compass is set at, I believe that that can really make the change.
So what I'm kind of getting from this conversation is that we can commit to, using products longer by taking into account all the options that we have, and we can take care of those that knowledge that we have, and in terms of hands-on experience, and help people out there, and vice versa. We that kind of need this can go out there and interact with people to get the knowledge necessary to make the repair work. So if you have any other insights that you would like to share with us, please do. Otherwise, I would like to go to the questions out there. The audience is very active on all of the platforms that I mentioned in the beginning. So
Okay.
Do you have anything, or should we go with the questions?
We can go with the questions. That's fine.
All right. So most of the questions actually talk about the accountability of these experts that are on the platform itself.
Yeah.
So how do we ensure that? We have had those issues with other kind of platforms that are active in the sharing economy, for example, Uber and Airbnb and so on. But now, how would you tackle that problem? Is that something that has been thought about? And what is the degree of accountability that is needed?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we've been thinking a lot about, and it's a difficult problem to kind of solve. One of the biggest things is restricting the things that people can ask for help on, I suppose, in terms of safety critical things. So electrical equipment, actually conducting the repairs on things where there's a fire risk, those types of things, it's a huge issue. And so if we can kind of limit the expertise of people, or the scope of the expertise, to a certain range of products which is within a safe limit, I think that can help. But at the end of the day, you can't control necessarily everything. You could video call your friend, and they can help guide you into making a really hazardous mistake. But at the end of the day as well, we hope that the people who are conducting the repair understand, the risks of doing those repairs as well. So with experts as well, kind of communicating those risks as much as possible. Obviously, people aren't always going to be aware. So if we can do our best in terms of moderating in that sense, obviously the less moderation we could do, the better. But that is a critical part of this.
Great. Another question that we are getting is about the emerging technologies out there. We have a bunch of technology that is kind of being applied in very different applications and systems. And one question that we have from the audience as well is, do you think that these technologies, in terms of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and so on, will activate repair even more? Is there a potential of that as well?
So I think it's difficult to say without seeing it in context, but in the project that I worked on, the SENSEI project, I did develop an AI system to kind of recognize steps and cater to a user's kind of expertise in that way, and give guidance as the user does a task. So in that sense, I think when we get AI to a point where it's contextually aware of environments, to the point of your friend sitting next to you understanding what the scenarios, what the situation is, I think at that point it's almost a point where we can start to introduce things like SENSEI, where we can now intervene and provide guidance because we have such a solid understanding of the context in which the user's in. So for example, the user's taking off a screw out of an iPhone, and having the system recognize and understand that, yes, the screw has been removed. The next logical step would be to take out the next screw. If the user's jumped steps ahead, understanding that context. So in that sense, I think it has huge implications. In terms of blockchain, I'm not sure how that might be applied. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on how that might be applied, but was there another technology that you were mentioning?
Not in this particular question, but I think
Yeah.
the blockchain question is up for speculation, so we can see in the future if that's something that people are pursuing more.
Yeah.
But we have more questions in terms of the data sets that are out there for the moment.
Right.
One person is saying that these data sets make the activity of non-commercial repair maybe more visual for people to actually see that it might be much more than we think it is. Do you agree with that statement, or is that something that is very questionable?
So it depends on, I think, how the interaction is designed. So a large part of my research was on that actual interaction, on how do we communicate the knowledge from one person to another. And so a large part of my focus was simplification. And I found through my research that pointing is actually a really primal way to communicate, and a very simple way to communicate, and one of the most effective ways to describe a range of different tasks. So often you see kind of videos of AR systems or augmented reality systems where there's videos popping up from devices and kind of different 3D diagrams popping up. On the SENSEI platform, we've simplified it down to kind of the simple ability to just point. And it almost seems too simple, but actually we've been able to get users to do quite a few different tasks, complex tasks that they didn't think that they could do before, just through this effective communication tool. So for sure you can be overwhelmed with this information, but the interaction design around how that information is communicated, I think, is really important. And also designing the system to understand when to give that information is also critical.
Now, there's another question about accountability again, but now from a different perspective. So now we're not looking at the expert itself, but we're looking at the person that is fixing this appliance that they want to repair. If I would say I would use a phone to repair, and I would talk to you, DJ, and you would tell me how to do this, and I get a component that is maybe not meant for that specific type of repair. It might be a component of a product recall, or there's any kind of problem with that. Who is the accountability on then? Am I to blame that didn't know that, or is it you that tried to help me?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. So I can kind of sideline this question by saying, giving you an example of, say, a phone and installing the wrong battery. So in one scenario of this, you can see how if you got the wrong battery for a phone, it could be disastrous. But often these batteries are designed with connectors in a way that only allow a connection of a very specific make and model of a battery. I'm just trying to put some context to the question. So in this way, there are already kind of systems in place to kind of limit the amount of mistakes that you can make. So you can't really place the wrong kind of component into this device in some cases. In some cases, you will be able to. So in that case, I think it goes without saying that the user and the user has to understand that there are kind of risks to conducting the repair as well. But there's also big rewards. So being able to do the repair rewards you with kind of a continual, it's a cost savings and continually being able to use your device. The risk might be to damage it. And at the beginning of every SENSEI session, the users are kind of are notified of this risk as well.
So there's an interesting question. Somebody just can't wait to use this platform. So they're asking if this is only for English-speaking people or who exactly can use this.
So currently just English-speaking people, but however, that's with the machine learning system. And so the experts can be from all over the world. So the human experts can be from all over the world, that is. So that could be quite exciting to see how even different cultures conduct repairs. My family is originally from India, and there are so many innovative ways that they fix things, on the farms in India that I could definitely learn from. So having that cross-cultural strategy of repair could be really beneficial, actually, when they have so many inventive methods of repairing and making the most out of certain things.
Now, I think a good point to leave the discussion today, although the time goes fast here, so I hope you have had time to say everything you wanted to say. But I would like to kind of close this down with some recommendations. We've been talking about making information more widely available. We have talked about the SENSEI platform and how that might enable people to fix their appliances from home. Do you have any other suggestions that you would like to add to this list before going on?
I think just understanding your ability to fix things and creating that demand still is really important. Everything from trying to make the small things is where it all starts, and that is where that culture and that value within yourself kind of begins to take form, and that is infectious. And when it becomes infectious, it does go to the top, and the voices are heard in that way. So even simple things like this amazing product that was designed here in London called Sugru, which makes the most out of iPhone cables, and you're able to repair them. Just going and instead of resorting to the option of purchasing another one, which can be often an easy option, you could also purchase a pack of Sugru and do that repair and customize your device and have it last so much longer, and tell your friends about that, and they'll see it. So these little things of just like taking a baby step towards trying to fix things yourself, I think is super important.
Great. And now just to end, where can we find more information about SENSEI, and where do we get to know more about how to repair things ourselves?
So you can find out more about SENSEI on my website, so dsangera.com. That's DSANGHERA.com. You can click on the SENSEI project, and I believe there's a separate website for the SENSEI project. And in terms of getting more information about repairs, you can do a quick Google search, and there are repair cafes all over the world. So you can go to these cafes where people bring in broken appliances, these types of things. And there's a huge movement out there that you can join the community of. So I think that's probably the best start.
And where it starts, it also ends. I would like to thank you very much for this conversation, DJ.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It has been an absolute pleasure. And I would also like to thank everybody out there that has been tuning in and listening to us talk about repair this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. It's evening for me, at least. And I very much enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed it as well. That is the beauty of the DIF. It brings us all together here in an online space where we can take note of the ideas out there and share ideas with other people. So this was the last live session of this day. It's the first day of the second week. We are live back tomorrow with other live sessions, but we have still some live sessions that we've done earlier during the day. There are films, there are podcasts up on the website, among which you can find 4.5 misconceptions about the circular economy. Now, if you are wondering what that half misconception is, or the other 4 for that matter, head to thinkdiff.co and learn more about those misconceptions. As said, we are going to be live tomorrow again, so please tune in and explore as much as you can on thinkdiff.co. So thank you from me, and we'll see you soon.